we're in closed session for quite some time, and counselors have signified to me that they would like to have a break at this time. So we'll take a half-hour break, Deputy Clerk? Okay. So it'll be a half-hour break or so. Okay, folks, we will reconvene this council and committee meeting. And I do have first an important item of business that Lee Robinson, General Manager of Public Works, wishes to share with us. So she's got the floor. This will be actually other business. Go for it, Lee.
Through the chairman to council, we have just received reports from our engineers. We had some concerns with respect to the Long Point Causeway Bridge yesterday, and we immediately sent the engineers out to have a look. Today they were out on boats looking underneath as well. We have a failure in part of the bridge deck. So we have traffic signals and cones up on their way. Now they will be up this evening before the sun goes down to reduce the traffic on the bridge to a single lane. They're working on their proposed remediation that we can do on an interim basis. And the speed limit has been reduced to 30 kilometers an hour through that section of the Causeway Bridge. And we are signing it no trucks on the interim basis. And I'll be reporting back to council as soon as we have the recommendations for the remediation to the wooden bridge deck that we can do on an interim basis to keep traffic moving in that area. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Public Works. What's the weight restriction over there?
Through the chairman to council, right now we're simply signing it no trucks at this point, and also no heavy trucks over the bridge.
And what about trailers and boats?
In theory, we would like to minimize the number of trailers and boats crossing over it at this point. Once we have the full engineer's report and all of that information, we will provide a lot more detailed information to council with respect to that. At this point, this is still happening minute by minute, so we don't have some definitive numbers for you.
So when do you expect to have the report?
I'm expecting that they're probably working on it this evening, so I suspect we'll be looking at some point tomorrow. We'll have some more definitive numbers.
Okay, will there be a press release to let people know, or?
Absolutely. We prefer to. We're hopeful that by announcing it this evening, the media will keep people apprised that we'll be having some stuff, and we'll absolutely do a press release as soon as we have some sufficient information to release.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me ask you: should it become where it's closed? I'm assuming it's going to take a while to rebuild this bridge.
Through the chairman to council, if the bridge requires full rebuilding, yes, it would take obviously quite a while to do that. From what we're understanding right now, and as again, it's still evolving minute by minute, the piers are actually in decent condition. So we're hopeful that we're actually going to be able to put in something to bridge between the two piers, because it's really the bridge deck that's the problem. Mm-hmm. So we're hopeful that there's an interim measure that we're going to be able to implement to avoid having to close the bridge.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lee has answered one of my questions that Councillor Height also had. But Lee, when and under what circumstance did we find out in the first instance that there was a problem? Did you see evidence of a collapse, or?
Through the chairman to council, I'm not sure that there's anybody in Public Works that's not aware that the bridge was obviously an area of concern. We actually had inspections done in April. And then when we were doing some pothole patching, we were a little bit concerned about some of the potholes that we were doing and the rate at which they had grown. And so we had the engineers come out again to do another inspection. So we, in anticipation, obviously, of the more busy season down in that area, we already had the inspections take place in April. Unfortunately, there's been some significant changes since we did the inspection in April.
Okay, Councillor Brett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Lee, sounds like a serious problem there. I'm just wondering, like when you say no trucks, I'm looking at fuel that has to go in there, sewage haulers, those kind of things. If that's the case and the deck is that bad, like, would you put maybe a Bailey Bridge in or something as an interim? I guess that's about the only thing we could do, would it not be?
Through the chairman to council, I would like to have an answer. That's one of the things we've actually asked the engineers to have a look at. Because the piers are in good shape, we're looking for whatever methods we can to actually bridge for the area where the deck is rotting. Ideally, There's something that we should be able to put in between the piers on an interim basis to allow this to continue, but we don't have, it's happening as we speak. People are writing reports, doing all of these sorts of things, completing the inspections, bringing in this stuff. So I don't have the full detailed analysis at this point, but we wanted to make sure that council was aware of it this evening.
Yeah. Do we have a Bailey Bridge anywhere? We have some out on the east, or sorry, the west side, do we not? Is that a Bailey Bridge?
Yep, the bridge, through the chairman to council, the bridge on 45 is a Bailey Bridge. It's slated to be, have work done on it this year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lee, this is obviously an unforeseen expense coming up here. I'm wondering if we could forego building one of the bridges in my ward by a year to take care of this more important problem.
Through the chairman to council, the current bridge contract has been awarded already. That being said, we don't have any estimates at this point for costs, et cetera. So really, those are something we will have to consider, but not yet. Not until we see what the engineers come back with for what we need to do on an interim basis.
It's very noble of you, Councillor Sonnenberg. Any other questions? No further questions. I've got a couple. Perhaps you mentioned that, Lee, I was speaking with the deputy clerk at the time. What if there ever is an evacuation of Long Point? Did you mention that? No? The need to evacuate because the bridge is...
Through the chairman to council, at this point, the engineer has not recommended that. I'm hopeful that they're going to be able to come up with a solution that's not going to require that. But obviously, these are things that our emergency management group has considered and will be prepared to implement whatever it is that we need to do. But again, at this point, the engineer has not recommended the closure.
And the causes of this, is it the high water table and the wave surges? Is that
Age.
age? Okay. Okay. Nothing further for this item? No. Okay. Do we need to receive that as information? No, it's other business. Are you staying with us, Ms. Robinson? Okay. Good. You've got other people out on the road then, watching out for this. Okay. We did pass the consent items. Closed session. We're going to communications, page 29. And who's got this report? Mr. Cribbs.
It's actually a good question, Chair, who's got the report. I can tell you I've been here just over a year, and I've seen two phenomenal demonstrations of why it's so good to be part of the management team here and work for this corporation. About a year ago, Lee Robinson offered up a portion of her division because it was in the collective best interest, and ultimately this council approved moving staff from one area to another to create a development engineering department under Chris Baird. And that's looking at the big picture and what's good for the corporation as opposed to empire building or protecting one's own turf. And tonight, I'm happy to present a report to you that involves the two of the divisions to my right, two of the divisions to my left. We had an entire senior leadership team come together, analyze this. This is not a CAO initiative. This is an initiative that comes from the very corporation, from people looking at how we're providing service and trying to find a better way to do that. I tell you right now, I'm immensely proud of this team and the fact that it brought this report to you. So respect and kudos, general managers. When you look, the world, she is a-changing. Social media is a really key part to how we should be, and to a limited extent are, operating. It is an extremely powerful and efficient tool to reach the public, to let them know that a bridge is out, to let them know that a gas well has started leaking, to let them know whatever it is, whatever information we need to disseminate. and then in a more passive way to make information available when other people want to access it at their convenience. Norfolk County hasn't entirely kept with the times. We have 4.6 graphic designers, and some of them do perform those social media, or some portions of those social media tasks I was just referring to, but not all of them. And their job descriptions don't take that in, and we have to sort of find ways around. And based on analysis performed by about a dozen people in this corporation, and I would be remiss not to mention the fact that we have a number of our existing graphic staff are themselves, I think, reacted in a very positive way to this proposition, and we have some reason to believe we're kind of thinking something of this themselves, so that, in fact, people across, up and down in this corporation can have sort of seen that we believe there's an advantage to creating a dedicated team of professionals who can do a whole gamut of what I'd like to generally call communications tasks. And whether that's creating the calendars for parks and recreation, or the waste management calendars, flyers, posters, advertisements, our online content, our website presence, we believe there's an opportunity to strengthen our provision of our service, strengthen the speed at which it responds, and can produce work product, and do so in the most modern context in a way that meets societal demand better than we currently are. And we do that by combining all of the people who currently do bits and pieces of that across the corporation into one dedicated team with the skills, the mission statement, the purpose of providing timely media products, press releases, speeches, whatever is required at that point in time, but that helps Norfolk residents access us and our services, and in turn helps us access Norfolk residents to inform them of any information we need them to know for any variety of health and safety, social service, recreational needs, and so it goes. Really, at this time, I could go on, and by inclination I often do, but I think in this instance it would be better to receive questions and have us respond to them as best we can. We feel that the business case is strong for a realignment and a repurposing of our existing staff to create some new positions that are more in line with how the modern world communicates. And on that note, I'd say I and a number of my colleagues are happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
The floor is open for questions. Councillor Black.
Well, I am supportive, and it might seem like a trivial question, but I have noticed some of the spelling in our reports, and some of the spelling's inconsistent. Like counselor, I see sometimes one L, sometimes two L's, or color, neighbor, that type of thing. Will that sort of thing improve with the centralized communication? I know a lot of our computers are preset to American spell check, and I think IT switches them over, but maybe sometimes they don't. It's just sort of, to me, part of our Canadian heritage and who we are, part of our culture, that we have distinct spelling, and it would be nice if it was consistent. So would that help? through you to our county manager, or as chief administrative officer.
It would be my honor, OUR, to answer. The question put forth with valor, OUR. In fairness, the new corporate communications department will not be reviewing the council reports. You may be aware that SLT has devised what we believe will be a more effective council report template, which we intend to use during the lame duck period as a sort of a trial to see how it's received by yourselves and the members of the public in general, and that may well address a number of those concerns. So we do have a plan to attack that. We do hope that it has been improving over the past year or so. We do have some increased quality controls, but that's not the specific point of this communications team. It's more about the daily work product that the average citizen would actually use in interacting with
Okay.
the corporation as a whole.
Yep. That's it.
Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Cribbs. I'm on page 32 of our agenda package here, and I'm trying to do some math here, but if you look at the start on paragraph interdepartmental implications, you spell out very clearly the 4.6 positions that are existing, which will go to 4 positions, correct?
Correct?
When I look at that, and again, I don't know, it always baffles my mind how we come up with points of a person, but I guess that's, the other person's legs and arms must be in some other budget. Is that correct? How safe to say? Anyways, when I look at the 4.6, and I know, the whole idea, first of all, I'll say this, I think the idea is great. I don't have a problem with it, but I'm trying to do the math with the money here. That's why I always look at the money. And you've got $40,000 you're asking for. I guess my question is, if we go from 4.6 to 4, how much was the 0.6 of a person making? Is that a fair question? Like, obviously, there's a salary involved there.
It's not that it's an entirely unfair question, it's just that it isn't about an identifiable person, it's about collectively shrinking the corporate resources into less than, because you're right, you can't have a 0.6 of a person. That actually means 5 human beings, one of which isn't devoted full-time work to this task, right? That's what we're talking about. And I can't tell you what position exactly gets eliminated, because we've retitled and repackaged them. So there isn't although the sentiment underlying the question is fair, there isn't actually a way to give you a direct answer. What probably matters more, to give you a sort of a more fair answer to what I think you're driving at, is the 3rd paragraph under financial services comments.
Right.
We don't know what the starting salary of the new director will be, because we don't know who that person is and what experience they do or don't bring. And then you start accordingly somewhere on the grid as part of a negotiation. So that sort of swing suggests that, ultimately there's a potential to save around $10,000 or to increase the costs around $10,000, depending on a couple of variables that haven't crystallized yet. It's very close to cost neutral, and a couple of variables either slightly tip it over or slightly tip it under. Broadly speaking, overall, it is fair to look you in the eye and say, we believe this will be cost neutral.
And I can appreciate that. I guess I look at it and I say, if we're going to go from 4.6 to 4, and you're saying overall, it could be a 10,500 increase overall in the, I'll say in the budget amount and their salary amount. And I'm just saying, I guess that's where we have to evaluate it and say, is the cost justify the whole process, I guess. So, okay, thank you.
Okay. I don't have any more hands. Mayor Luke.
Mr. Chair, do you have a motion?
Yes, I do not have a mover.
Well, I would like to move a motion on page 29, and I believe we want to add the 2nd paragraph, and I see our deputy clerk right on the ball. I probably jumped in before she was going to. My apologies. I mean, I know Andy would have caught it, but I just wasn't. I'm going to pay for that. I would like to move the motion and the 2nd paragraph.
I'm going to ask the deputy clerk
Read that,
to
and we
read
get
that
a
motion.
seconder.
Through the chair, that report CAO 1817 Communications Department proposal be received as information, and that County Council instruct the CAO and General Manager of Employee and Corporate Services to take the necessary steps to form a corporate communications department, which will function as a department within the Employee and Corporate Services Division, And further that County Council approve a one-time budget amendment to the Employee and Corporate Services Division budget in the amount of $40,000 to cover initial setup, transitional, administrative, recruitment, technological, and potential employment-related costs. And further that Norfolk County Council instruct the Manager of Human Resources and Staff Development and the General Manager of Employee and Corporate Services to notify QP Local 4700 of the county's formal intention to create a communications department, transform one current collective bargaining position into a non-union position, and perform all other requisite tasks surrounding notice that will have potential impact upon the employment status of identifiable QP Local 4700 members.
Okay, that was moved by Mayor Luke, and I need a seconder. Councillor Black. Discussion, Mayor Luke.
Well, Mr. Chair, simply put, I am going to support this. I agree with the county manager that we have a $210 million corporation here, and it is not something unusual to have a small communications department. We are not adding bodies to our overall FTE. If this was an add-on, that gentleman would not be seated. He'd probably be over here with his hands on my throat. Just kidding, Councillor Wells. Mr. Chair, we already have in our 4.6 3 graphic designers, 3 FTEs. So we already have that spread over 3 different areas. We already have a 0.6 communication officer. And we also already have a 1.0 communication coordinator. We are not reinventing something new. Okay, there is a $40,000 ouch initial one-time upstart that we didn't budget for. But if we go from 4.6 to 4.0, year after year after year after year, we will have realized some savings. So tell me why we wouldn't want this. We're already doing it, but we're going to now have it more consolidated, more concise, hopefully some cutback in overtime hours, as mentioned in the report. Fair to say? Thank you.
Councillor Wells.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, it should not come as any surprise that I will be supporting this. I have said repeatedly that we should be reducing our staff complement where possible. This is an example of where we are doing that. And of course, there is cost associated with doing that. That's why the $40,000. However, that's a one-time cost, and the 0.6 cost is ever going. So I would give up that to get where we are going, and I congratulate our staff for looking at ways to better serve the ratepayers of Norfolk County. And the best way to serve the ratepayers of Norfolk County is to find ways to cut costs and still provide good service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Councillor Black.
Mr. Chairman, along the same lines as the Mayor and Councillor Wells, and sort of tagging on to what the Chief Administrative Officer already said, I'm liking the direction and the thinking of staff more and more. I've heard the words big picture thinking, and I'm seeing it now. I'm seeing it through what the CAO said about the Public Works and staffing restructuring, even the Public Works with their willingness to look at alternative ways of repairing roads, the Community Services with a whole different concept for a multi-use recreational facility, and even with the CAO and his own programming administration restructuring. I think this to me, I always like the words economical, efficient, and effective, and I see this satisfying all 3 of those E's. Economical, as already stated, we're going from 4.6 down to 4 in staffing, so ultimately reducing some costs, and even if we don't reduce costs, we're going to increase our efficiency of using these people. We're pulling together the common elements, and I think any time that you can pull common elements together, you're going to increase your efficiency and effectiveness of delivering those that product and that service to ultimately the taxpayers. So overall, this is, in my mind, an excellent report, an excellent thing that staff are bringing forward to us. So in the end, it will benefit all of us. Thank you.
Anything further? You've all heard the motion by Mayor Luke and seconded by Councillor Black. Call the vote. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. So this is a most strategic move for delivery of product and service. Thank you to those involved. We're going to go a step back now and go to page 25 of the agenda package. This is the award of contract for supply of hot mix asphalt. I'm going to call on Ms. Robinson to give this report.
Through the chairman to council, before you is the award for the contract for the supply of hot mix asphalt. Excuse me. This is the contract that we call an award to multiple contractors. This is for the supply of the material. So if we're doing some work somewhere and we need a truckload of asphalt, we do a mathematical calculation to figure out where the cheapest place is from that particular location. We then send our own trucks that's loaded at their facility, and then we bring it back and we use it at our facility. We typically award to everybody for the prices that they have set, and that way when we're actually doing the work, we can actually do calculations to determine the most cost-effective place for supply of the work. You will note that there's a significant increase in costs this year, and that's because although we're not seeing these significant increases in our large-scale contracts, this is small batch work, and as a result, we're seeing significant increases. We spoke with some neighboring municipalities, and they're seeing the exact same increases in the supply of this material, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions to the report? Councillor Brunton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd asked for this report, and I don't really have a problem, but I wanted to get a couple of things clear here, and I guess through you to Lee, if I may. Lee, I know Dufferin, we have a batching plant right here in 14th Street West, and where does cocoa, where do they haul from?
Through the chairman to council, this contract isn't for them to do any hauling. This contract is for us to do the hauling. So we drive to their facilities and then we bring it back. If you're asking for the location of the facilities, some of Cocoa has a facility in the Paris area. They have some sort of in the Woodstock area as well. So depending on where we're working in the county, we're the cheapest places to actually acquire the material.
Okay, I realize that, but I guess my point is it's a tough contract to call. Did we call it in 17, or did we just go in and make a deal with Dufferin? Because, I mean, it's the only plant within appropriate driving distance for us and for a hauler, I guess. You know, it's like when any asphalt product that we lay down, I mean, Dufferin's sitting in the driver's seat somewhat. It's been like that for years. I guess my question is, in the future, could we ask, when we look at these, to ask the location of their batch plant? I think it's important because I know Hagersville used to have a plant. I don't know if they still have one, do they?
Through the chairman to council, they do provide us with the locations for these. Again, we don't only buy our material from the Dufferin facility here in Simcoe. Much of the work in the west comes from facilities located west of the municipality. We actually have a calculation for the mileage and the costs and everything. There's a very long formula that we use to determine where the cheapest place is to provide it for the time that we need it. That's why it's awarded to multiple people, because of the vast geographic differences in our municipality. Depending on where we're doing work, where it's actually cheaper. When you get super far to the east, some of the facilities are actually closer to the other side, and they come from the Hamilton area with respect to our prices.
So are you saying that they don't just buy from, or